So, hi everyone, welcome back to Beyond Zenith, the podcast where we go beyond the title. Really excited today as I'm joined by Derek, the CTO at Yieldly. Yieldly's been on an incredible run. So, in a very short space of time, the company raised Series A and then it followed with a 40 million Series B just months later. Which says a huge amount about the momentum behind the business, the strength of the product, and the size of the opportunity they're building towards. So, Derek, looking forward to unpack a lot of that today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be on the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm really looking forward to this because Udemy sits right in the middle of AI work, communication, and learning. So, for people who may not know you yet, where does your story start with technology?
I started way back in the day. My dad actually taught me to program C++ back in middle school, and kind of going through there, I always knew that I wanted to go into coding and computer science. Went to university, went to Microsoft after that, working in the DirectX team, and then worked through a small company called Panopto, doing lecture recording and playback, and ended up at Udemy about 3 years ago.
Nice, what a journey. And you started off, as you mentioned, in deep engineering and at Microsoft. Did you always know that you wanted to build things?
Yeah, I always knew that I really enjoyed building things with code, solving problems, and especially back then I was very focused on kind of the complexity of the problems. And I really grew through my time at Microsoft and at Panopto, becoming a lot more focused on the customer problems I could solve and the impact I could have by working through these puzzles and problems to actually help people and kind of make for a better outcome.
And then what did Microsoft teach you early on that still affects how you operate today?
I think I learned a lot of great lessons at Microsoft, especially within the technical realm. I was working on a very low level system. Effectively, it could emulate a GPU within just normal processing. So I got to work in assembly level code, high performance C++ code, and just work through an incredible number of technical problems that really gave me a fantastic foundation for the rest of my career.
And at what point did you realize you wanted to be close to the customer and the business impact of what you're building?
I realized after about 5 years at Microsoft that I just wasn't as engaged anymore, and it was because it was a lot of working in this kind of siloed component, still in the same space, seeing it as very like step by step minor evolutions, no longer the big ticket pushes that we had done before. And then I knew I wanted to go out and go somewhere smaller because I've always just wanted to try that, and coming from a big company, it seemed like a natural evolution. That's when I found Panopto, really connected with the team there and joined up. And as I worked there, I got to see as an organization how you can be very close to the customer and learned how that can become just such an engaging part of the building experience.
And then from big tech to startup, so Panopto feels like a really important chapter in your story because, as you mentioned, it pulled you closer to product, customer, and learning. Looking back, how much did that experience shape how you think today?
Oh, massively impactful for me because not only was it me stepping into a startup, it was me going through my first growth into management, eventually moving up and up the management ladder. And I learned a lot about how you can be very customer focused. And that's not just in terms of learning from customers, building things for customers. It's how you show up when things go wrong, how you deal with customer escalations, how you deal with an organization overall that's all very aligned to serve customers and with all the different functions. So I found it to be just an incredible growth opportunity and learning experience.
Was it a big culture shift at first, or
Uh, yes, I would say yes, but it didn't really impact me, and it didn't feel like a negative culture shift or any sort of big difference for me. I always worked at Microsoft as a team that was running quite leanly, so we were very operating towards people take a lot of ownership. We didn't have that much structure as much as just like organized backlogs. So it's kind of jumping that into not that different of a place, and I started out transitioning into a very low level team at Panopto, so I was able to kind of hit the ground running and learn as I went from there.
so it was like a natural progression?
Yeah, and if there's one kind of takeaway from it, I think the thing that I always recommend to folks is try to find a place in the organization where you can leverage like your work history or the expertise that you bring. For Panopto, coming in with such a depth of low-level DirectX graphics knowledge and transferring that to media is a really smooth transition. I was able to have a lot of impact early on, and then that made the transition of everything else, culture-wise, smaller organization-wise, much, much easier.
Nice. At what point did your mindset shift from engineer to thinking more broadly about teams, customer, and company building?
It was very early on at Panopto because I was a lot more exposed to we're doing this feature or this change for this customer. Oh, you shipped it. Here's their reaction. Oh, there was this bug. Here's all the tickets associated with this bug. Go fix that right now, like literally right now. Uh, and I found that to be just a really engaging and like fun, dynamic experience.
And at Panopto, it also gave you exposure to what works and what breaks inside scaling companies. What did that teach you that you can then later helped with your time at Udly?
So many things it'd be difficult to enumerate them all, but the things that really stick out to me are you have to find the right level of structure at each stage.
Mhm.
And that's going to change every few months, every few years as you continue to grow. But you always need some degree of an aligning principle of like how are we tracking work, how are we prioritizing work, how are we working back from the customer, but how do we keep that as lean as possible? Because especially in the early days with the customer, you might have to do something, well, I'll call this kind of jokingly unnatural, to land those customers and to build those early relationships and to deliver that value.
And do you feel that since you scaled and your time at Udly that you've continued that as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think we had many times early, especially before we were landing some of our big ticket customers, where our sales cycle was like, okay, we're just going to build the feature real time for you. We know that it's all going to be throwaway work, but we're going to learn a lot by doing this. And then after we've done this, and after your rollout has succeeded, we're going to go back and figure out how we make this a much better feature, and how we create this in a way that everyone can reuse later. And I think a lot of that experimentation, but the understanding, like having the engineers aligned underneath, this is what's happening, here's the priority, here's the scope, here's how we do it, but we make those decisions at an incredible pace. That makes a huge difference in your ability to execute as a startup.
And it sounds like real partnership as well, like working together, learning together, failing together, iterating again.
Absolutely.
So you've mentioned you had some failure stories from Panopto that shaped how you lead now. What's one lesson from that chapter that still stays with you?
Uh, many stories, of course, but the one that always sticks out to me is especially at Panopto, we went through a phase. So let me give a bit of history first, actually. We were a lecture recording tool primarily. So a lot of it was you would record, that gets saved, that goes into the cloud. Students can go review it whenever. They can catch up after class, review materials, etc. We ended up doing a push into webcasting, especially, and then large-scale webcasting, multi-thousand person webcasts. That evolution had a lot of really bumpy periods, especially, and these are webcasts, so there's like literally thousands of people subscribed. We, in some cases, had to do live database modification on tables during the webcast to prevent them from breaking. We had to do all sorts of interesting live troubleshooting to keep everything alive. But learning how to show up for customers in those moments when they need you most, work through those bugs, think very resiliently at scale, and run the operations team to respond to them has been hugely influential both in my career at Panopto and at Udly, where as we scale up bigger and bigger and bigger, those skills get put to the test.
Nice. Is there moments where you can kind of see where the road's going to take you and then you kind of pivot because you know what that's going to look like?
Yeah, and I view it very much as I think it's when you don't know where the road's going to take you, but there's 20 things that could go wrong. And now you're thinking a lot ahead of like, okay, what can I do now to fix that? What do I need for that moment? And how do we make sure that we're showing up right for the team or for the customer as a team?
Nice. And so, how Udly happened? So, you weren't actively looking to jump back into startup life when Udly appeared. How did that happen? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so funny story overall. I ended up leaving Panopto, just kind of trajectory of the company, ended up going a different direction after I was acquired by PE. And so I was kind of figuring out what's next for me. I always want to take time off, so I took a few months off. And through a friend, I ended up being introduced to Varen at the AI2 incubator. And we chatted, we hit it off a bit, but I was basically like, I don't want to do a startup. My last startup was a big thing, and now I just want to have something a bit more peaceful for a little bit. And then I just we went our different ways. But Varen kept bugging me every like 3-4 weeks of like, oh, we need this thing. Could you come in and contract for this? Could you maybe give us a hand with this? And eventually I was just like, fine. I don't have another job lined up anyway, so I was like, I'll just give this a shot. And about 48 hours into my contracting gig, I was already working like 12-hour days because I was just so excited to be in there. And we were talking about full-time employment because I knew it was a place I wanted to go to and I wanted to work at.
And so it initially wasn't meant to be full time. It was only contract. And you mentioned 12 hours. You like what changed? What did you see that, made you want to dive in?
There's a bunch of stuff. I think one, it really comes down to three things to me. One is having the mission alignment, seeing something where there's obviously a lot of customers, or at that point, not customers, we didn't charge for anything, users really excited for the opportunity of what Udly can provide them and how we can help them. So mission alignment, big part. Second big part, a bit of a selfish one, but it's true, very interesting technical problems. Lots and lots of interesting technical problems. And I think it makes it just super fun to work on. And the last one was the team. There's just obviously so much energy, drive, super smart folks in the room, where I knew it was where I wanted to be next in terms of working with this team, solving these hard problems for a good mission.
And then I know you mentioned in the beginning you were providing it to customers free and doing use cases. Was there a moment where you had the aha moment of like, right, there's something here, we're onto something?
Uh, yes, although there was a lot of non-aha moments along the way because we're a startup. We went through this whole desktop app recording only your voice phase. We went through releasing pricing, and then everyone churned and stopped using the platform. The parts where we really started to see things take off is when we realized there's this urgent need in large organizations to do highly standardized communications training. And that especially lights up, in our opinion, when you get to very, very large organizations, 500, 1,000 people plus, because sure, there's opportunities in small ones to train people. It's a lot more dynamic, it's a bit easier to onboard. When you have 1,000 people, there's just no way to train them. And there's just no way to actually solve this problem without AI and AI technology and what we were building. So we were really, really excited to see that opportunity and see how customers reacted to this technology and this solution.
Yeah, I actually recommended your tool to a candidate because they said that they found it quite difficult to answer interview questions. And so there was a live example where I told them to use it so it can help them, because for companies or hiring managers to test if that individual can do the work, like you're going to need to ask them questions. Yes, you can look at the code, but it's a skill. So, I think it really does help when people struggle to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I like that point because I think it sums it up well. It's like the core idea behind Udly has always rung super true. There are so many places in someone's life where communication is what matters most, and so many people who struggle getting over that bar. For us, it's like that interesting aspect of, we know that this is a real, real, real problem. How do you make a sustainable business off of it such that we can solve it for everyone? But the engine has to kind of run itself and be a very powerful flywheel. That's where we found, especially go-to-market enablement, very, very powerful. But there's all sorts of other enablement that we work on with medical, interview, everything under the sun.
What were your first impressions of Varan and Isha as founders?
Both were very lively, engaged individuals. I mean, they're very much founders at the core. Varen is the huge personality, larger than life personality, super, super down to earth, engaging, while also being very, very driven and customer, and basically just focused on the outcome. So I pair extremely well with his personality type because he's the kind of big visionary, strategic thinker. I'm the operational kind of like make everything work and translate those ideas to reality. So we hit it off really, really well at the beginning. Well, we continue to, but also at the beginning. Isha kind of sits in the middle of us of being a bit more operationally minded, super sharp, incredibly engaged with customers, very, very customer focused as well. And so we were able to create like this really nice spectrum of kind of skills of across the map. We had all of our different lanes. We're able to tackle a bunch of interesting customer problems with that blend of skill sets. So I think it worked out really, really well.
It sounds like you all have the perfect ingredients of your personalities to really mesh well.
And I think it's the personalities. I think almost comes down a lot to, we're all kind of humble, we're curious, we actually like the human aspect of this, not just the work aspect of it. I think that part was the easiest part. I think actually my biggest takeaway, kind of looking at other startups, is like find the stylistic components where you and the other people you're starting a startup with is multiplicative in impact. It's like the 1 + 1 = 3 kind of aspect. How do you find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who can do that?
Yeah, and I'd have to say, from what they post and what you see, they have such humility, which I think, you can see that from everyone and how successful you've been. So it really shines through. So you said speed of learning is something they got unusually right early on. What did that look like in practice?
I think it's how close we stay to our customers and how willing we are to ship something early and pivot quickly. So what I see, especially as a super strength of Varen and Isha, is it's not just we'll ship something to customers. They will go in and they won't just ask customers, they'll ask them to share their screen and walk through it and do this with me. And let's look at your dashboard and, very, very, very precise, low level, like how did you use this exactly? What does this look like in your organization? What does all these pieces look like? No abstract, everything has to be tangible in the moment, like show me. That has allowed us to learn super, super fast because we can ship a very early prototype, have that type of super hands-on learning experiences, and something that I've learned from them to do, and then iterate much, much quicker. And that can be a timeline of days or hours.
It sounds like they want to find things that they need to alter or not right so they can just really hone in on that customer experience and get it right for the individual.
Yes, and I think even more than that, like the real driving part of it is they really, really want to understand exactly what's going on with this customer. Not like where could things be or maybe what they feel, but tactically, like what is exactly happening, what is exactly your day in the life, and how do we make it better?
Yeah, nice. And then early Udly reality. So when you first joined, what did the business actually feel like internally?
Uh, it was definitely a startup. So I think one of the big areas of impact I had very early on is adding that basic bits of structure. And it's something that coming from a larger company, I had gone from that IC into multi-team manager role. So I kind of knew all the checkpoints along the way. So I was able very quickly, institute slightly cleaner planning and prioritization processes. Still really, really fast, but it avoided a lot of the whiplash that you see as so common in small organizations. And just try to get everyone operating in the same way, especially in like company growth or hiring or whatever else under the hood.
Nice. So did you take from Microsoft, Panopto, and then with your learnings today, be able to kind of mesh it together?
Yeah, exactly. And I would say a lot of Microsoft style doesn't really translate to startups. It's such a different environment. I think Panopto, I learned a ton. And I also learned a ton through friends going through other startups and small company experiences. So I kind of had both that community aspect as well as my prior work experience to kind of leverage in that moment.
Nice. People now see the funding rounds, big logos and growth, but what did that early reality look like behind the scenes?
Uh, I mean, it's a crazy time, so everyone's experience is very, very different right now. For us, we've always been, what's the best way to put this? I think the best way to put this is, for us, the funding rounds are always like big events and stressful, but we never let it distract us from like what we're actually trying to do. And I think that's why we've been able to go through like multiple successful funding rounds. It's been great. It's like our focus has always been acquire strong customers who we think that we can actually make a difference for, and then make them have an incredible experience and make them grow their usage. Well, make them organically grow their usage because we're providing value, but make it so valuable to them that they're just super, super excited about Udly and what we can do for them. That has always been what's made it easiest for us to get to the next round of funding, is the customers who are excited and see the impact and view Udly as like a huge asset to them. So I think it's all kind of like tied in a really healthy flywheel.
Nice. It sounds like it's all tied in, like you said, to your roadmap, and so it just organically happens. And it's amazing, it's successful, but it's just the natural step, I guess, of your trajectory.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I kind of hone in is it's really not like the roadmap or the direction we're building in. Yes, obviously vision is a big part of it. We've always had a very audacious vision for how we can impact everyone through who needs help with communication, which is basically everyone. I think the biggest part is having those champions and having those customers that we really took out all the stops to help. And having those just be basically all of our customers, especially early on. You want every single customer to be as happy as possible as long as they're like within an ICP fit for you.
Yeah. What's really lovely about your product is that it's AI that helps people communicate better. So it really hones in on that human communication skill.
Yes, it's one of the things I really enjoy about working here is being able to work on something where our target of AI is just human upskilling and helping people do their jobs better, prepare for their next interview, prepare for whatever else is upcoming in their life. And I think it's just a great opportunity where you can see the impact, the positive impact AI can have on folks in their lives.
You said LinkedIn only shows the good part of startup life. What's one part of Udly journey people probably don't fully see from the outside?
Oh gosh, there's so many. There's the crazy outages where people are hot fixing stuff from cars or like literally having to do quarter-mile sprints to get back to the office in time. There's when customers churn, especially early on. Early customer churns hurt a lot, and even if they're a natural part of the growth, it's just like something you're really, really invested in. Or just the aspect of what happens when you hire someone and in a small team and they don't work out. Like those are always the hard moments. So I think it's always funny looking on LinkedIn because everyone's doing like nice glossy like glitzy layer, but beneath it everything's always a mess. That's the one thing I've learned. Every company everywhere is a total mess, and it's just the way things are.
And that's how you learn, right? If you don't have them, then you never get the lessons.
Exactly. If it's not messy, you're probably organizing too much, and that's probably going to hurt your fans in the long run anyway.
Yeah, if it's not messy, you're not winning. So,
Yeah.
what problem do you think Udly was solving when you first joined? Because I know you mentioned it went on a different journey, and then how has that evolved?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at the core, our mission has really just never changed. And one thing that we're excited about is how do we stay true to that mission while also targeting like specific verticals that are obviously good for the business and good for the business health.
Mm-hmm.
So at the core, our mission has always been help everyone communicate with confidence, and that might be going through interviews, doctors doing telehealth, salespeople making customer calls, everything else under the sun. How that's kind of evolved for us is we've found, especially obviously in sales team and go-to-market organizations, we have the biggest opportunity to build that engine. But we still actively work with and explore many, many opportunities with customers in healthcare space where have these huge opportunities for impact. Or interviewee, which is always a space that is very heartwarming because you're helping someone in a pretty hard time of need for them. And when they get that job or you hear from them, hey, I landed my job because of Udly, like that's clear impact to us that really motivates us to keep moving forwards.
And I imagine it couldn't be more important now with the job market being so volatile.
Oh yeah, I think the job market being very volatile. I think as people are having so many issues, also getting through into companies in the first place. You hear all these stories that people having to apply to 100 different companies. when you get that interview, you really want to make the most of it. And how are we there to help people be in a position to do that?
Yeah, 100%. The worst feedback I get is when a manager will say that the candidate didn't relay certain skills that they had. So anything where, in that hour, 45 minutes, you've only got one shot to give that individual confidence, I think it's a great tool.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
Was there a moment where it stopped feeling like an interesting AI tool and started feeling like a real company?
I think that was actually kind of always the case for us. Like the AI side was there to support the mission, and we were actually founded before Gen AI was any sort of big thing, like before ChatGPT. So we were kind of in a position where we had the opportunity to become very AI native quickly because we were so small, but it was never like forced. It was never, oh yeah, it's AI and now you can do this. It was like, here's the problem. AI just happens to slot in and fill that issue really well.
Wow, what a perfect time to have a company.
Yeah, it's you always hear timing is a big part of startups, and that was a part of it for sure.
Was meant to be. So, on to customer obsession and enterprise growth. Like, one thing that has come through strongly when we spoke was Udly's growth has been deeply tied to how you treat your customers. What does customer obsession actually mean inside the business?
Uh, Whole 9 yards. It's how in the sales cycle are you doing the right discovery to understand your customers' needs, and not just telling them a story, but coming to each meeting super prepared to say, how do we fix this for you? How do we solve this problem? I remember this from the past calls. Like, how are we your partner solving your problem through the power of Udly? And then after they close, how is the customer success manager there, right, to get them implemented, up and running, and make that, again, a partnership? How is the support team there ready to support them and really on top of everything? And how is the engineering team tied at the hip with the support team so that we know that we're closing issues really quickly and we deeply understand customer pain? And like all those teams kind of need to work in concert together to make it such that it feels like it's the entire Udly team is showing up for our customers.
So, it's like a customer obsession life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. When I learned a lot of the core concepts of how to build teams like this at Panopto, a lot of it was all about how are you making virtuous cycles for your customers, and how is every single ticket that goes through the support slowly turning the crank on engineering to make it better for sales and customer success and our customer, etc. And the cycle continues.
You mentioned doing unnatural things for early customers, building features quickly, testing manually, getting things over the line. Can you talk about that mindset at all?
Yeah, and this I think applies. It's very important within the scope of especially early companies because not only do you have there's a term of like sell what's on the truck, and I think even at our stage we're not at sell what's on the truck yet. It's still like we have to know where the puck is going and be selling towards where the puck is going. But in the early stages, you don't really know exactly where the puck is going. You have to learn from customers, and you have to have those customers walk you through their problems and like deeply understand them. And the only way that you get opportunities to do that is by building something very bespoke to them that you think you can translate to something better long term, but just going through that work of like getting it in their hands, like actually doing the rollout, actually making it successful, and learning. And I think that's a really important transition time as a company. Is like don't get too in your head of like how do we build into this long term. Just understand like what you're doing might be all throwaway, and that's okay.
Makes sense because if you keep on building something without checking with the customer, then you don't really have the right product market fit.
Exactly. And I think this is a super exciting time for that. The interesting aspect, not kind of mentioned there, is like we were doing this pre-AI. So now that you have AI development, the opportunities to do this are much more unlimited. And I definitely recommend it. It's like just how do you make sure that what you're doing doesn't accidentally mire you in tech or product at longer term, which is up to the team to handle.
And how did some of those early enterprise conversations even begin?
It's there's a lot of stories. It's always a bit messy. There's always some sort of personal in or some sort of edge that you get, and then you just have to work it. So Varen is the master of that. And I've always admired his ability to really get in, build relationships, understand customers, and translate that to having opportunities to solve their problems. Because like they know, hey, it's not just like here's a friendly, smooth person. He's really curious. He really wants to understand what's wrong. He really wants to solve what's wrong for me, and I just need to give him that shot.
Nice. What do you think made large companies trust Udly so early?
Uh, there's two sides to this story actually, which are very interesting. The first one is I happen to run SOC 2 Type 2 compliance at Panopto, which let me kind of come in and early help us level up that story. Huge part of it is, can you actually operate trustworthy? Can you actually get on call and describe the things that you're doing accurately and truthfully in a way that builds trust? And does your product just naturally feel built well in a way that confers trust to organizations? The second part is finding the sponsor who's willing to go out on a limb for you. In a lot of big companies, getting through the door is not, oh, now we do a procurement. It's you have to have a champion who's like, this is going to be a huge pain in my butt. I'm going to have to do a bunch of paperwork over the next 4 weeks to 6 weeks and figure out this process, and it's going to be really, really annoying. But I'm going to do it because we have, like, I feel so strongly that this is such a strong opportunity. I want to get through the door. And so you have to have like both the technical and the go-to-market expertise there to actually make it through the front door of a company.
And when you get in, did you notice that it was easy to find a champion because the product added so much value straight on?
No, especially at big companies. I've never or very rarely heard of stories where it's like just easy to find the champion. It's always you have to learn the organization, learn the org chart, find the people. Sometimes you find an example that's actually come up multiple times for us is we had our actual target organizations, but we found someone who would be our champion in a non-target organization. And then you're just like, okay, I'm going to work with you because once I get through the door there, it's easier to get into my targets because even though I solve their problem better, they just aren't willing to do the homework to get us through the door. So it's very, very fluid situations.
Makes sense. And you said early customers need to feel like you have their back. How important was that in winning and expanding accounts?
Oh, always super, super, super important, especially at larger enterprises. Like people they're super busy. They need a hand. They're taking a bet. Sometimes they're using political and often actual capital to have Udly in play. They need to feel like we've got their back and that we're going to solve their problems, and that should things go wrong, especially as a startup, we're going to be there and take care of it for them, not just leave them stranded.
And was there anything that surprised you most once enterprise customers started rolling out Udly?
Let's see. I think the most interesting parts to me are, first off, I always love seeing the stories of the individuals who just love Udly. It's always like a heartwarming thing, but a lot of this is like, it's still training. It's still, okay, learn this pitch or like practice for this conversation. But we have found actually quite a few users who will practice tens of times, in some cases hundreds of times, and they're just like, I just love how much can help me personally. Like this is just an area where even in corporate training, it's just really, really important to me and really, really impactful to me. So that's one part that's always fun to see and observe. And the other part is navigating the issues of quickly scaling up in large rollouts is always exciting. Roller coaster style exciting, but very exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, I can imagine. I understand it, big enterprise. I've come from that myself, and trying to train people at scale is quite hard while also still doing the job. So, having a tool like yourself is just a dream for everyone. And then
That is the
how
dream.
living the dream, and then how do you balance being bespoke for strategic customers while still building a scalable product?
It's always a set of business decisions that are tricky to navigate. My viewpoint on it is you want to really understand why are you doing this? What are they actually trying to solve? Like, don't just react to feature requests. Like, understand what's beneath it. think through where does this go and how annoying is this going to be in a year or 2 years or 3 years, because especially for large enterprises it can be pretty hard to put the genie back in the bottle on it. And then what happens if you say no? It's the last one that I think sometimes people also don't explore. It's like sometimes you can just say like, hey, we really, really can't do this, because if we do this, I can't build as good of a product for you. And like, we'll solve this problem another way, we'll mitigate it, we'll figure out a way around this, but like, I just can't in good conscience do this because I know I need to serve you and build the best product possible in a year, 2 years, 3 years.
Nice. And that probably ties back to you really understanding the customer, being a partner, because you know their environment so well that you're able to push back for the right reasons.
Exactly. And as you know, as if people really understand that you're doing this earnestly to help them and earnestly from like a point of trust and partnership, it's a very different story than if you're just like, well, feature requests go into our product backlog and we'll get back to you in 3 months and maybe never on if this will happen, and then we'll say yes or no. It's like, no, it's a very frustrating experience, right?
Yeah, communication, like exactly what your tool does, is the key to everything. If you stripped away the AI hype completely, why do you think customers actually buy Udly?
I think we solve critical issues around training, learning, development, and enablement in general. So, in large organizations, how are you getting people to use the same talking points, the new talking points, talk about this new feature correctly? It becomes an untenable problem with 1,000 people, because you can send them a slide deck or you can send them, a link to a learning plan. They might skim it, they might watch the videos. It won't stick unless they practice it. And then after they practice it, they have to go off and do it, and you need some way to measure how they did it in the field. And then they need to learn from what they did and go back and practice again, etc. So like, there's just a cycle of learning, which we're there to help and enable, and that works across all the go-to-market enablement, where it's very sales focused, customer success, sales engineering. Doctors have this as well. It's like all of these cases are situations where it's like the same underlying problem that we can now just solve at scale.
Yeah, I believe they say it takes about 7 times of communication for really to embed. And when you just send someone a video to watch, it's true. You don't know how much they actually took in. And with everyone's attention span going down, I suppose this really helps.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, there's 7 times rule, which I've often viewed as like how long until it sticks in their head. But putting something into words is still very different than that. So you can get people to internalize it, but how do you start speaking about the new feature, even if you've read it 7 times and you're like, yeah, I know it. Then you try to say the talking points and you're like, oh, it's not quite feeling right. And then someone asks a really hard question and you don't know how to phrase the answer to that. And it's like that the dynamicism of real-time conversation is just so different than learning and understanding. And I think everyone has had those experiences in their lives where like, I know this, I can't communicate it properly, but like I know it in my head, and we need to help people get through that communication aspect, right?
Yeah, and they also say that when you then teach it to someone else, it really helps to embed as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've worked with some major enterprise customers. What changes when thousands of people are relying on the product?
Uh, Everything at scale with AI is just very, very interesting because it's a stochastic system. And well, two things. It's a stochastic system, so all sorts of interesting things can go wrong in terms of how the role play goes, how the feedback works, etc. But also there's just the aspect of scale in today's environment. I know, plenty of ink has been spilled on uptimes for Anthropic and ChatGPT and everything else under the sun. How are you building on a shaky foundation at massive scale for an organization in a way that's reliable for real-time communication, and then you handle the stochasticism on top of like the AI might say something random or go off on a tangent. Lots of interesting problems to solve in there across the board.
Yeah, I can imagine. Lots of moving parts there.
Yes, to say the least.
And you've mentioned that enterprise expectations are moving faster than anything you've seen before. What does that mean for a company like Udly?
Everyone's sprinting. Everyone's stuck on the same treadmill together. That's moving incredibly fast, and we just have to make sure that we're able to deliver that value as fast as our customers' expectations go up, continue to evolve in our own working and internal styles, and just kind of see where everything goes together. I think it's a very exciting, dynamic time for sure.
And then how do you build AI products that feel reliable enough for enterprise rollouts when the underlying models are still evolving so quickly?
It's just a lot of hard work and diligence. I think where I always point to folks on it is like, there's the traditional stuff of you build metrics or you build observability things, etc. A lot of it is just like the hard grunt work too of how are you just testing a ton? When tickets come up, how do you work with the customer to just look at a bunch of things manually and then understand, obviously with customers' permission for any kind of customer data, understand like what exactly went wrong? What exactly did you expect? And then try to reason out that, okay, how do we actually test and like guard against this at scale? Because a lot of the problems are just very specific to an organization, and you have to kind of coax the rest of the system to work well within it.
Nice. And then what starts breaking first inside a company growing that quickly?
I think the biggest issue is always inter-team communication and alignment, and how do you get everyone on the same page of how we show up for customers, how we solve customer problems, etc. I think as you add more and more people, they don't know exactly the history, how we used to work together. Processes need to become more strict while not slowing things down too much. How do you navigate all of those without losing your edge? And I think that's like a really fun dynamic problem when growing a company.
Yeah, the governance gives everyone freedom.
Yeah, and even beyond that, it's like the thing that sticks out to me is what's the way around all the governance too? Because if you try to do too much process, the first thing that drops is the quality for customers, because something gets stuck in a queue somewhere, no one takes action. You need to make sure that there's the bat phone to work around it, to call in the right folks at the right time.
And did the speed of growth ever feel uncomfortable?
Uh, I'd say yes, but not in an unhealthy way. I think it's something where you see everything going on in the industry. Everyone's growing very quickly. We have to meet the moment. If you're growing this quickly, you'll always feel uncomfortable. If you're feeling comfortable, it's either you figured out something incredible, which is awesome for you, or you're just in the moment with everyone else.
And you said the challenge is to meet customer needs while still building incredible things in a fast moving market. How do you decide where to focus?
That's a massive question. There's all sorts of pieces to that puzzle, because you have to figure out what the strategic priorities are, where the customer requests, how do you organize them by the impact, the scale, the revenue tied to them in some cases. I think I view it much more as how do you embrace that messiness and just work through it and understand, like, you can't just go in there with a RISE framework for prioritization or something and expect it to work. Like, you really have to understand and reason through them and weigh each priority very, very thoughtfully.
And then on to fundraising and growth. So Udemy went from Series A to B very quickly. From the outside, that looks incredibly smooth. What did that period feel like internally?
Interestingly, that one internally actually felt pretty good. I think getting through the A round is often a really, really big moment for companies, because you're really transitioning to fundraising rounds being much more about the customers and like a bit less about the story. As we went on to the B, we went into it very much with the mindset of, well, we raised our A. It's not like we're out of money. So if the opportunities come up and we see value alignment, like, let's very much consider it. But we don't have to go crazy, go out there and fundraise super, super hard or anything like that. So for us, it was an opportunity to do it based on the merits of our work rather than from a position of like desperation or anything like that.
And I guess anyone going through that journey, is there any tips or any lessons learned at all?
The one that to continue to harp on it is make the current customers you have super, super happy. I think repeatedly through every stage of our growth. The thing that has made it so much easier is when our customers are willing to show up for things and say, yeah, Udly's great. I love Udly. Like, it solved XYZ problems. I love working with the team. If you have that, and if your customers are growing, it solves a lot of other hard parts of the conversation for you.
Nice. And you said funding doesn't really change the mission, it just gives you more tools to solve the customer problems. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think it very much as funding unlocks new strategic bets and unlocks more runway so you can take more shots on goal if you need it. And it allows you to be a bit more flexible in how you work to solve problems. Like suddenly timelines can be targeted in the right way and calibrated in the right way for both your customers and the company. So to me, it's very much about like every round of funding, how are we solving the customer problems, like either in a bigger scope or for more customers, and how are those all engines that kind of feed into the giant flywheel overall.
Nice. And then when people ask about fundraising, and I know you said this earlier, you always bring it back to customer happiness, retention, hitting the numbers. Is that a part that, just from your experience, you'd say sometimes founders overcomplicate at all?
I think it's more, you can get into lots of different situations where you get really, really focused on landing new customers, but your current customers aren't super happy. You can get focused on big strategic bets for potential TAM, and then your current customers aren't quite as happy as they could be. Where I look back at it, it's like the biggest difference maker often for us on the ease of a fundraising round or how that worked was then be able to talk to our customers and our customers being really, really happy. And like that, it changes the tenor of the conversation because no longer is it as much of a bet on the possibilities or like of these risks. Now it's like, okay, well, the foundation seems to be in a pretty healthy place. That lets you build quite a bit on top of that without it being quite as shaky.
Yeah, I can imagine if people went back to your customers and they weren't saying good things, it'd be a bit hard to grow.
Yeah, so how much of this is as a house of cards versus how much of this is like a really solid engine that now we're up leveling.
And was there anything that you believe from working at Udly that investors saw that made them believe that this is just much bigger than what it is?
Uh, I think the mission statement is a big part of it too, because we're not there just to like. Don't get me wrong, we're working on revenue enablement, huge part of our mission and our business, but we also look at it and say we can solve this in medical, we can solve this in interviews, we can solve this in so many other spaces, and have that both positive impact for ourselves, the mission of the company, but the financial impact is really, really important too because the TAM becomes extremely large.
Nice. And for founders building in crowded AI markets, what matters more than hype when they're trying to raise?
Um, Happy customers, a clear lane. Why are you different? Why is you being different actually working? And why are customers choosing you? I think are all really, really big parts.
Then on to culture, speed, and feedback. You said speed is fundamental now, but especially the speed of learning. What does that actually look like day to day?
How are you? I mean, so much ink has been spilled on this, but how are you prototyping quickly? How are you putting those prototypes in customer hands? How are you watching them actually use it and apply it? And how does that transition either into you changing gears and going away from it, or productizing it, or otherwise giving them the next prototype? I think the most interesting things in my mind to really hone in on and understand now is how do you complete that very, very quick life cycle of highly prototype, get customer hands on time without also super overcomplicating your product or anything like that. Because I think that's the next thing that becomes too easy is like, slap on 50 different features. Now no one can figure out how the thing should work.
Yeah, and then before you know it, it's too bespoke and it's just faster than your old legacy system.
Exactly, yep.
And then how do you build a culture that moves fast without becoming chaotic?
Really high quality communication without relying on a bunch of meetings? How are you providing the right artifacts, providing the right cadences and the right rituals that everyone knows what they're doing, but the cost of aligning people is negligible? And I think that's a large part of it. And how do you just build those relationships, or have the teams build their own relationships, really, such that they can just kind of run on their own, and you can measure things at a much lower cadence than feeling like you have to.
Nice. So you have no death of internal meetings then?
Yeah, we're. I personally do not like meetings very much, and so my meetings approach are very short and very fast, and very to the point. And like, let's keep moving from there.
Nice. You spoke about early honest feedback being important inside Yardley. What does that, like, why does that matter so much in a scaling startup?
I mean, I'd argue I think it matters everywhere, because I think a lot of people underestimate how much people actually like feedback that's very thoughtful and is delivered from a place of earnestness rather than meanness. And if you can go in and say, and in the right environment with the right stage set, hey, you did this thing. If you had done this thing, it would have really helped. Here's what went wrong. In my experience, almost everyone who's like a really good team player and really good, individual contributor is excited to hear that. They're like, oh yeah, great. Now I've grown and now I have the opportunity to do better. You just need to always be doing that and always be doing it in a healthy way.
And how do you make sure feedback is generally two-way rather than just top down?
Oh, I ask a lot. I'll ask for feedback. I'll ask people to prep feedback. I'll ask people to give feedback on each other. I think that just trying to make sure that not only you're asking, but you're receiving it really well is key. And so a big part to me is also when people give me feedback, making sure I'm really earnestly listening and I change behavior off of it. And it's clear it's important to me, which is. And I think that's how you create a really healthy environment.
Did you find initially it was quite hard to get people to be as honest?
No, and I think that was an aspect of the work that Baron and Isha did in building the company and the initial team. So they have always been extremely feedback forwards individuals. They take feedback really, really well. And they always wanted to build an environment where it's unusually transparent, unusually clear, and like everyone feels very, very comfortable in communicating clearly. It takes a lot of effort to do that, but I think it was effort well spent.
Sounds like a really nice environment. What kind of person thrives in Udemy environment?
The things that stick out are always about, we kind of distilled them down to our three values. Humility, how are you showing up always as a student, always curious, always with a low ego, and kind of really, really bringing yourself to work. Bias for action, how are you jumping in, taking on initiatives? The problems I want to see are too many people jump in to solve a problem rather than too few. And I want that to be an environment where like everyone's showing up for each other and like everyone's jumping on problems, not waiting for them to be assigned. And the last one is we kind of call it win together, but it's effectively how are we as a team working towards a really audacious aspect, but the teamwork and the way that we collaborate is like the part that allows us to achieve that objective. And so we need to kind of foster all the aspects that work into that such that we're showing up as a team for our customers, for our objectives, everything else.
And then on to startup war stories. So you mentioned the funniest startup memories are often the ones that felt painful at the time. What's a moment from early Udemy journey that now makes you laugh?
Uh, I think some of the good ones were we had an outage at the same night that was a team dinner. And so we were halfway to the dinner. Two of our devs had to start hotfixing it from the car while driving to dinner. Me and another developer was a quarter mile from the office, so we had to turn around and literally run back to the office to start to work through it. So that was fun. We did solve the outage. We were also at a small scale, luckily, so it was a bit less painful. The second one that always stuck out is we ended up having a DNS provider issue where our site became unavailable for about 50% of our customers. And this became like a long, drawn-out issue that took over a day to fix. And eventually, one of our folks just started cold calling people down the executive line at our DNS providers basically was like figuring out who the execs are and then cold calling them for a DNS provider because we just couldn't get support to help us. And so he eventually got the COO, I think it was, to pick up, became kind of friends with him, was texting back and forth, and like got them to kind of kickstart the rest of the process to get the issue resolved. So it's like kind of crazy moment there.
Wow, do you have their number now so you can just call them directly?
I don't. We still have it somewhere, I'm sure. So.
Just in case. And you also mentioned a North Korean fake candidate story.
Gosh, yes. I mean, well, I feel like now everyone's got that story, but for us it was a fun one. So.
Are you able to expand on that at all?
Yeah, of course. So I'll give a back context for anyone who's not aware. A burgeoning industry is especially folks, most likely in many cases from North Korea, effectively pretending to be candidates, getting jobs at U.S. companies, and trying and using that basically as a revenue source for the government. We ended up having a candidate who we strongly believe was in that category. They came in, did really well, was actually a very strong communicator, did great on technical screens, had a family issue, so they weren't able to come into the office for some interviews, which was weird, but that was near the holidays, we were understanding. And then we got on to like, okay, there's a few like yellow flags, we're going to talk to them about references and stuff. And then we started to see things go off the rails in a really interesting manner. It's like all the references were clearly fake. And then when I pushed on them, they were clearly more fake. And then I started digging, and it's like, oh wait, their LinkedIn has no photo, it has very few connections, their location is different, their area code of their phone number does not match the locations on LinkedIn. It's actually a completely different location. And I just kept going digging and digging and digging. And it's like all these signs of like, something's just wrong. Like, I don't think this person exists. Eventually it like came to a head and I was like, oh gosh, okay, I understand this. So now through that, we've had to kind of go back and think through like all these signs that we have to check, but it's kind of a crazy story of how much time we spent with the candidate, like talking to them, building a relationship, and then realizing it's all kind of faked.
Indeed. And we've all had those stories. I think you see it a lot. What's interesting is clearly they're going to get found out. So that's what, like, I don't know how far someone thinks it's going to go, but yeah.
It's apparently working very well. I mean, there's the Amazon story, etc., of folks that they found embedded in their IT team after, I forget, was it months, something like that? But I also know another friend at a different company who actually hired the same person twice, actually, who was a fake candidate. So it's crazy times out there right now.
Definitely. And there was also a story about Varun flying from Seattle to San Fran. Again, don't know if you're able.
Yeah, that'll be a good one to end on. So in terms of showing up for the customers and doing international things, one thing that always stuck out from early on is how do you make sure that you show up in person? Because it really makes all the difference, especially in like sales and relationship building cycles. And we've had actually multiple times, the one always sticks out, where the customer basically was like, hey, I want to meet and chat about this contract in person. Can we meet at this coffee house? The interesting part was they were in San Francisco, we were in Seattle. And Baron got that email, I think, at like 4 p.m. And so he was like, okay, I guess I'm going to the airport now. I'm going to figure out what flight gets me to San Francisco tonight because I am going to be there tomorrow at 8 a.m. for coffee. And the deal closed and it worked out, but it's like one of those things where if he hadn't showed up, I don't think we would have made it, or I don't know if we would have made it. And certainly it was the opportunity for us as a small company to be like, we're going to be there, we're going to be your partner, even if it's in San Francisco tomorrow.
That's real partnership right there.
That's right.
And then before we wrap up, is there anything that you're personally excited that you're building right now at all?
There's a ton. I think the avenue I'm most excited for is how do we really push the ways that you can learn with AI into just a incredibly engaging multimodal coaching experience. How is this using the AI, being able to share videos and screens with you, you share your screen with the AI, it's always just your coach who's always accessible there. And we make this move on from a case of like role play or practice where it's stressful into like, how's this just your buddy who's helping you through, allowing you to achieve your objectives, allowing you to practice when you need to. And we just close close the gap of the friction of that experience into something that's just like so learner forwards and so engaging that people are excited to keep learning from it and keep growing with it.
And is there any hints that you're able to share about what's coming next at Udly?
I mean, all that in a bow, and it's just how do we make it such that I guess if the on the hint aspect, the angle I would point out is just like how do we make that super immersive as an experience? Because it's not just about talking to something or like it sharing a document. This needs to be a lot deeper in terms of video, screen share, use tools together, go deep on whatever else is like the true problem to you as a user. We think that that's the massive opportunity because like what everyone really wants is a person next to them who can like look over at their screen and say, oh yeah, don't do that. Oh, last week remember when you practiced and like that went wrong? Don't do that. Like that's what people need, and I think with AI we can solve that problem for them.
And the last question, any tips or anything you can share for other founders going on a similar journey?
I just keep going back to stay super close to your customers, learn a lot as you work, and just grind. A lot of it's just the grind, and you just gotta keep on it and keep working, but keep super close to your customers.
Nice. Well, Derek, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you on.
Awesome. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.